All right. I think we're going. Mike's doing okay. Shift it a tiny bit and hopefully not break anything. Okay, cool. It still looks a little crooked. Oh well, we'll just leave it be and hopefully it's okay. Anyway, welcome back. Should we on one of these? I think it's Tuesday and I hope yours is going fantastic. And yeah, today a lot of talking, frankly. Just a lot of talking. Like the past couple days, I'm like, I don't have that many meetings, and then suddenly everyone just wants to chat. It's like, okay, cool. I didn't have meetings initially, but now I do. Sad. I mean, sometimes they're okay, but a lot of times it's just like I didn't need to be here for that. Yeah, you live and learn, I suppose, or at least you hope others live and learn. That way, they're not using up your time for things anymore. Anywho, I thought I'd go back to something from yesterday. I did not anticipate for that to unravel into a rant about content and how some things are just like trying like too hard to push something into everything that they do instead of just being genuinely excited about certain things. But along with the same process that I'm going through right now, just from a project perspective for this interview, I have to do a bit of code for like the first time in a while. I might have mentioned like in the last video that I haven't like really coded for something professionally, maybe close to a year. Maybe it's a little less than a year. Maybe it's like 10 months, 8 to 10 months. The last thing I think I did was, oh gosh, I think it was a React front end for an identity provider. Which was fun too. I do enjoy going into that stuff, but having been so far away from it for a while, I got into this project being like, I'm gonna hate this. I haven't done it in a long time. I'm gonna have forgotten everything, and then I start doing it, and it just all came back. And then I realized that programming was always kind of fun. I don't know if like that would apply. Well, I know for sure it wouldn't apply to everybody because I think you kind of need a certain mindset for programming to be fun. You have to, in some capacity, be okay with not getting the right answer, and probably even beyond that, you kind of want to have fun not finding the answer while trying to get to that right answer. Like case in point, yesterday when I was working on this basically just a really basic API, not even like doing like some of the things that you would normally do, like dependency injected services and repositories. I'm still doing a dependency injected kind of data object. It's an in-memory data source that I'm pushing into a controller, but I was referring to a document put together for that library that's like probably four major versions out of date, and I could not, for I don't know 20 minutes maybe, figure out why my stuff wouldn't compile. It was just like, why can't I get this to go through? And I'm like, why? Like, I'm following this perfectly. This has to work. And then I realized, oh, I'm doing something. I'm working with a version of this library using a different, like targeting a different framework than what I'm referencing is talking about. I'm like, okay, so I have to think about this more fundamentally. It's not what's wrong with this thing. Why am I following it wrong? It's what is missing that is expected to be here now that I'm on this framework and this version of this library. And like, long story short, it just turned into, I was missing one property on the way that I was injecting that data source into the controller for working with the in-memory data store. It was less than a line of code. And still, when I got that right, when it finally started working, and I was just like, that was cool. I got to learn how to use a new library in a way, like I probably wouldn't use it like in any kind of practice. You wouldn't use an in-memory store for anything in production, but it's decent for just getting going with just projects you want to see if they're working. And in this case, it's just like the product is mainly about API structure and deployment, so it really doesn't matter like what data store you're using. So it was just a really quick way to be like, here's what dependency injection looks like in the context of an API. Definitely replaces a repository in the future, but this shows you how to do that thing. And I was just able to start using that and like throughout that throughout the API that I was creating. So it was like a quick way to just learn something new, and then just everything fall into place after that. Like putting together APIs it's what I did for a few years of my career as a developer, just designing and creating new endpoints for APIs, and then conveying what was available to our customers. So it's not, that part wasn't new or particularly difficult. It's why I was like, this project won't be too bad or anything. And then I was like, but let's try and spice this up a little bit just for me, and then I can convey that to other people. And that does make me take a bit more time with the project, which is probably good. I think they're expecting people to take like 8 to 10 hours putting this together. And if you know everything that goes into it, it's kind of like, all right, I'll code this thing in like 5 minutes and okay, I'll write about it now. And that's not terribly exciting. I don't particularly enjoy that. I don't like building the same thing over and over again. If I'm going to have to do that, I kind of want to do something a little bit new with it every time. And what's kind of neat about programming is that it's always, like, that's almost always an option. You don't have to do something the same way every time. And it's going to kind of put a little spin on that. Like how I mentioned yesterday, where the concept of making an API is just that. There's really only 1 or 2 ways that you would go about that. One of those ways nobody really talks about, and the other one's just the ubiquitous right way to do it. You don't not do it that way. But you can explore other tools and libraries that you can use to make that process a little bit easier. And since I've never written for this group before, I just basically get to use the stuff that I've always used, with the exception of the library that I was using for the in-memory data store. But it's one of those things that's just like, for a long time, I'm like, I'm trying to build this thing that I've built dozens of times before. And to normal people, maybe to normal people, that is frustrating. Failing at making something that you know how to make just because you're trying to incorporate this one new library into it. But like that puzzle, just trying to get it to work, is surprisingly satisfying for me. And I think I kind of forgot that over the course of close to a year, where most of the work that I'm doing right now is project planning, documentation, ramping people up and teaching people the stuff that I know, and building very business specific things. I'm not doing much of the technical stuff. I trust the other people around me to figure out how to do those things in some way, but just is this thing possible? Will customers like it? That's a lot of what I do right now. That, and just encouraging people to be the best developer that they can be, and giving them all the opportunities they can to learn and better themselves, as a decent manager should do. But it's been such a while since I've just been able to just go start a new project and just do stuff with it. It's been kind of nice. Like, as much as I kind of poopied all over the concept of what I was building and what it looked like this group was building, the process of putting that together is something that I haven't done in such a long time, that it ended up being kind of fun. I still have a little bit more work to do with that. I plan on doing a little bit more of that tonight, and then actually getting to writing, which we'll see. Just based on how I talked with you about like how I don't really like that disingenuousness, that maybe I can use that as a reason to try something new and just throw a little bit of what I think could work with that and see if they like it. I mean, if they're going to run it anyway, might as well see if a new way of writing is a decent way to pull in more engagement rather than the rigidity that they have today. So maybe you can breathe a little bit of that spark in there, that kind of excitement of working with something new and actually talking about that a little bit in the going over the whole process with the audience. It's not embarrassing to say, hey, first time I've worked at this, ran into a couple things, remember to do this thing, you need it. So yeah, it's been kind of fun going back to doing a little programming. Not sure. I mean, I spent years, and that was like all I did for quite a while. So obviously, it's not something I hate. It was just after being away from it for a while, I wasn't sure if I'd feel the same way coming back to it, and it's surprising. It still feels like a puzzle. It still feels like a puzzle, and thankfully, I still kind of like puzzles. Anyway, I think that's really about it for this one. Not much takeaway there. If you like puzzles, you don't mind failing a lot, and you like the feeling of overcoming a challenge, maybe give programming a shot. Yeah, it's probably a niche thing to enjoy. There's a lot of them out there, though. There's a lot of them out there. You can't deny that. So there's at least a fair number of people who either like the strictness of it, that you can't get a machine to do something you didn't tell it to. So as long as you know how to tell it to do something, you're good. But there's still a bit of a creative aspect to it. After all, you're creating stuff with it. So you have to know what you're building, and you have to know how that's going to be used and why it'll be used. As anybody can just go ahead and create an API, but what does yours do? How does it stand out? What's it doing? Is it solving a problem? That you can sort of harness that bit of creativity in your process while you're building it. I mean, I know one of the things that I built just recently at this point, it's probably the last thing I built outside of work, was a playlist converter for Heather. She had an MP3 player that, or a new MP3 player. She used to just convert playlists from her computer, just export those and put them into her MP3 player, and that didn't work anymore. And I'm like, well, what's the output, and what's the new MP3 player's playlist format look like? And I just wrote a converter. So she just puts together a playlist, exports it from her computer, and then just runs it through the tool I made, and out comes another file. She can just throw on her MP3 player, and she's good to go. So, like, it's one of those things that's kind of like this. I could probably just make this a video too, but programming is a lot like a trade. When I think of like people who do electrical work or plumbing or like mechanics and carpentry, they're all people who are versed in speaking a certain language of building stuff, and programming just became the way of doing that digitally. And the ubiquity of just computers and the internet has made it a utility, and a lot of people have them, and a lot of people need them worked on. There's a lot of like, everyone's got programs that need taking a look at, and the more stuff goes open source, the more that's available for people who can just sort of pop open the hood, figuratively speaking, for a program and take a look at it and be like, this is why it doesn't work. I've had to do that at work plenty of times for third-party software that we use. It's like, this isn't working right anymore. Why doesn't it work? It's doing some really weird thing. We're going to change this. So, yeah. It's certainly a thing. If any of those aspects reach you in some way, or tickle your fancy, then why not give it a shot? I find it fun, at the very least. Wouldn't take my word for something that you should do that would take up your normal fun time, though. Yeah, I think that's about it for this one. Yeah, hope your Tuesday is going well, and you continue to have a good one, and have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.